Hello there guys! For today's video, I'm going to show you how to blend object from background in Photoshop. And also we will dive deeper into using select subject for masking, applying hue and saturation and Gaussian blur for creating shadows, applying curves to apply the midtones, shadows, highlights, and the radiant glow. So let's get started. So here in our document, I prepare here two images. This first image will serve as our background, and I have here another image of a watermelon that will serve as our object. The first step we're going to do here is we're going to bring this watermelon into our background document. So to do that, press V or the move tool, just click on this, and then click and drop it on our original document. There you go. And let's rename this layer as the watermelon. The next step here is we're going to remove the white background of the watermelon. So to do that, making sure that you're selected on that watermelon layer, and then go to the menu bar, go to select and choose subject. Now it already created a selection around the watermelon. Now let's go and select on this icon, add the mask icon. All right, so if I'm going to zoom this one in, you will notice that the edges of the watermelon has those white thing remains. All right, so we're going to remove unwanted things around this watermelon. Okay, so to do that, all I have to do is select it on that watermelon layer, go to the menu bar, go to filter, go to other, and then choose minimum. So this minimum dialog box will appear. So from the preserve, set this one to roundness. For the radius, set this one to 1 pixels, and then hit OK. All right, so once I did that, if I'm going to zoom this one in, you can see that the edges of the object is smoother now. And by the way, if you find this video helpful so far, please consider subscribing to help YouTube algorithm show my videos to other nerds like us. Now the next step we're going to do here is we're going to position and scale the watermelon. So selected on that watermelon layer, press Ctrl plus T for the transformation command, and you can now bring it on the center of this table, and we can increase or decrease the size. And then hit enter. Now the next step here is we're going to add shadows. So to do that, with that watermelon layer selected, let's create a duplicate layer of that. Press Ctrl plus J. And then from this copy, I'm going to click and drag it under the watermelon layer. And let's rename this one as the shadow. Now with this shadow layer selected, let's apply here a hue and saturation. So go to the adjustment layer icon, this one, just click this icon and then choose on hue and saturation. And then make sure that you're going to click on this. This is the create clipping mask. So if I click that, all the effects will be only clip on this shadow layer, right? So, and then for the adjustments from the lightness, I'm going to decrease this one into the amount of 100. Okay, so for you to see it, I'm going to hide first the watermelon layer. So actually that is what happened to that shadow layer. Okay, there you are. All right, now next up here is we're going to merge the hue and saturation and the shadow layer. So selected on that hue and saturation, press Control, hold it, and click on the shadow layer, and right click on it, and then select merge layers. There you are. Okay, next up here is we're going to adjust the position of the shadow layer. So selected on that shadow layer, press Ctrl plus T. There you go. And then right click on it and then choose on distort. Okay. And from this point, I'm going to drag this one going to the table to something like that. All right. So let's zoom this one in for you to be able to see it. Press Ctrl plus T again, right click, and then choose distort. Okay, let's position that looks like something that it's flattened on the table. Hit enter. Now the next step here is we're going to decrease the opacity of this shadow layer. So to do that, click on this opacity, decrease this one into the amount of 55, right? Trying to make sure that we're just trying to imitate the shadow of this wood here under. Okay, there you are. All right. Now the next step here is we're going to create another shadow layer. So we're going to duplicate the shadow layer, and that will be for the darker shadow. So actually, this one that we just created is just for a light shadow. Okay, so to do that, with that shadow layer selected, press Ctrl plus J to create a duplicate. There you go, it's already there. Then press Ctrl plus T for the transformation command, and then let's decrease the size of this inner shadow. Right click on it for the perspective so that we can this one is okay for me. Now hit enter. Okay, so from the opacity of this, so of course, because it's already inside that, so I'm going to decrease this one into the amount of just 40, something like this. And then let's rename these layers. This layer will be set as the dark shadow, and the other one will be the light shadow. Okay, now the next step here is we're going to add a Gaussian blur for each shadow. So from the dark shadow, selected on that, go to the menu bar, go to filter, then choose blur, go to Gaussian blur. Okay, so from the dark shadow, I'm just going to increase the radius of the pixels to amount 10. Okay, just to make it look more natural, then hit OK. All right, and from the light shadow, selected on that, go to the menu bar again, go to filter, go to blur, and choose Gaussian blur. So this time, I'm going to set the radius into just amount of 5 pixels, and then hit OK. Select the dark shadow, press Ctrl, and also select on that light shadow. Then right click, and then merge layers. There you go. Because our next goal here is to remove the shadow on that part, because as you can see here, that doesn't look well because the shadow must only be on the table but not on the lake. So to do that, we're going to select on the background layer for now, and then go to the menu bar, find the quick selection tool, and then let's create a selection only on the table. There you go. And then again, go back and select on the dark shadow. With this selection, press Ctrl Shift plus I to invert the selection. So once we already invert the selection, hit backspace or delete. So once I did that, I already instantly removed the shadow on that area. Then press Ctrl plus D to deselect. Now we're done with the shadows. Now the next step here is we're going to fix on the shadow, midtones, and highlights on this watermelon with the use of curves. So to do that, select on that watermelon layer, go to the adjustment layer icon, and then choose curves. Right, so from the first curve, make sure that you're going to create a clipping mask. Just click on this. All right, so all the effects will be only applied to the watermelon layer. Right, so under the histogram, now let's do this one first, our shadow. So let's create a point from here at the middle, and then click and drag this one down from the amount we want for our shadow. Yes, this one is okay for me. This is good. And then from the layer mask thumbnail of these curves, I'm going to invert that, selected on that. Let's invert that by pressing Ctrl plus I. There you go. Now we already invert that. And then let's get the brush tool. Okay, from the options on top, I'm going to put the opacity into the amount of 80% and make sure we're going to make use of a soft round brush. For the foreground color, let's set this one to white. There you go. Okay, and then now let's darken this area, right? Because this is the shadow part, because the sun is on this way. So if the sun is shining through this way, that means the part of the watermelon over here will be darkened up. So let's darken this one up like this. Now I'm going to adjust the opacity, just 40%, and I'm going to darken this area. All right, looking good. And another thing, let's name this one as our shadow curve. Now the next step here is we're going to add another curve layer for the midtone. So to do that, go to the adjustment layer icon, then choose on curves. And then don't forget to click on this create clipping mask. Now let's add a point here from here. So let's create a point here. And this time I'm going to increase this one going this way, but just a little bit. And then let's rename this one as our mid-tone curves. Now the next step here is for the highlight curves. So again, let's go to the adjustment layer icon and then choose curves again. Create a clipping mask. Let's select this. Let's add a point from the middle. And this time I'm going to click and drag this one up. Okay, something like this. It's going to be the brighter because it's going to be the highlights. And then let's invert the layer mask thumbnail. Select on that layer mask thumbnail. Press Ctrl plus I. Now it's black. And then get the brush tool. Press B. Right, for the opacity, I'm good with 40%. Now let's brighten on this area here, where we think the sun is exposing the watermelon. That looks good. And then let's rename this one as the highlight curve. Okay, there you go. Now that looks natural to me. The next step here is we're going to add another curves, and that will be for the radiant glow around this. Okay, so to do that, let's go again to the adjustment layer icon, select that, and then choose on curves, then also select on the create clipping mask. Okay, from this, now let's create a point from here. This time, this will be for the glow, so I'm gonna keep on making it the brightest. Layer mask thumbnail, invert that, press Ctrl plus I. Okay, now let's zoom this one in. Let's get a brush tool, press B for that. So I'm going to decrease the size of the brush tool, all right, to as small as this. Okay, there you go. All right, and then for the opacity, adjust this one into 80%. Okay, because we're going to add a glow on this area, just on the edges. All right, let's also add some glue around the edges of this stem. That looks nice. And then another thing here, selected on that brush tool still. Now let's make it bigger this time. Okay, something like this size. Now for the opacity, I'm gonna set this one just to 10%. Okay, there you go. And then the reason why I did that, because we're going to brighten up this highlight that shows like it's shining. All right. All right. That looks okay for me. Now it seems like it's shiny. It's because of the sun exposure. And now I'm okay with this. Now let's just put all these layers into one folder. So select on that curve one, press Control, hold it, and then select on all of those layers. All right. Then press Control plus G to group them. So let me show you the before and after. So this one is the before, and this one is the after. And that is how to blend object from background in Photoshop.